Hey guys, former world record largest nose holder here. On my YouTube I love making guides, but this is one I've actually really wanted to do for a long time, and it's basically focusing on how to improve your aim, like aiming, and how to generally improve at gaming overall. Now, I want this to be a part series video, like I can't really squeeze all the information into one video, so it'll most likely be in separate videos, but each video will focus specifically on certain subjects of aiming and gaming. Bit of info on myself. My name is Peter, and I'm 24 years old. I'm known mostly online as X8 Reaps or X8 Reapers, but I do have a lot of experience in gaming. I've been gaming all my life. I've gamed at a high competitive level. I've just gamed for so many years, and I feel like that now there are a lot of great guides out there for aim and, improving at gaming and so on, but I feel like a lot of guides don't get to some very important aspects of it. That gaming is not all just about the correct mouse, the correct mouse pad. It actually goes a little bit deeper than that, and I feel that this guide will help you and can help you quite a lot, but it does take quite a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of willpower, although what I'm about to tell you is based completely on my experience in the most honest, understandable way possible. So the first part I'm going to be touching up on in this video would be the mental and the physical aspects of gaming. Now, that might sound a bit unusual or strange, but trust me, I believe that this can help you more than you think. I'm going to give a bit of insight now on one of these examples of my experience, and it's a story that I've said on my stream a few times, but I believe it is quite helpful once you understand, I guess, the deeper meaning of it. So, the story is basically when I started gaming like properly and seriously wanting to grow at a proper level, I started playing Battlefield 4 as one of those main games. And when I first started, I loved flying the scout helicopter. It was pretty much the most enjoyable part of the game for me. I just enjoyed it. It was unique, it was different to any other game that I've played, and I just really enjoyed the helicopter aspects, regardless. I kept playing it for a long time, and gradually over time I started improving and getting better. I encountered much better players than me, and because I was at a much lower skill level, my standards were basically not there. I just purely played for fun. I didn't care about how I performed or what happened. I just played. Now, it got to a point over time where I started to get quite noticed for my skill. So people would start making comments on, oh, this guy is really good, oh, this guy's this, whatever. People just started to notice my ability and how I was learning the Scout Heli. And when I was playing Scout Heli, I always liked to verse the best people. I always liked to verse the best pilots at the time. And before you know it, a couple of years later, I pretty much was classed as one of, if not the best scout pilots in the OC region. Now, at that time, like, this is not an ego stroking thing. I'm just giving an example here to explain this is how much, I guess, this experience got to my head, but I learned a lot from it. At the time, I'd basically been completely, like, no one had beaten me for a long, long time. I'm talking 4 years here, 3 years. Well, yeah, actually 4 years. And every pilot I've ever came into contact with, I could basically beat. And I had no problem beating them. Some were very good, some were, not as experienced, but I could just beat all of them. I had no issues beating basically any of them. Now, one day, I was in the middle of a training experience, I think I'm not sure who it was, but I think I was training someone or trying to help them improve. It was on one of my public private training servers. Anyway, a player joined, and I had no idea who he was, or, he just seemed like any guy. And he said, oh, I just wanted to ask if I could, practice training. So we were doing dual practice training, so just 1v1s. And I said, oh, sure, no problem. Now, in that state that I was in, I was extremely egotistical and arrogant. I believed I was the best, I believed I was better than everybody, and that nobody could beat me. And boy, I was very wrong. So, I versed this guy, and he had beaten me once, and I'd be, oh, okay, this guy, I underestimated him, he's actually quite good to what I expected. Well, before you know it, an hour passed, and he beats me 50-0. Now, 50-0, he beat me 50 times in a row, and I could not beat him once. Now, coming from a guy that's basically beaten everyone he's come into contact with for a long time, and being classed as the best in the whole OC region, being beaten this guy was horrible. It was quite painful. I'm like, well, I've practiced for so long, I've done so much hard work, and this guy just walks along and crushes me. It hurts. It's painful. Now, here is the biggest lesson, I believe. Here's the biggest part of what Here is the biggest part of what really defines you to improve as a gamer. Now, I was given a choice in that position, and keep in mind my ego and my arrogance was extremely high. So, I was given the choice between accepting what the situation was, so accepting that this person was better than me, accepting that I have more to learn, and accepting that you're not the best. You know what I mean? There's always going to be somebody better than you. At the time, I didn't want to do that, so I ended up, coming up with excuses to myself, justifying it, saying, I might have been tired, or this or that. And this is the part that matters. You have two choices. You can go down the path of ego or acceptance. Now, the path of acceptance is accepting the reality for what it is. The reality is that I was beaten. I found someone much better than me, and that's that. That's basically it. He's better. He beat me. That's what it is, and I have to just accept that. Or, I could have taken the path of ego, where I could have made excuses, justified my loss, could have said, I was tired, or he's cheating, or anything. I could have come up with anything, any reason behind it, just to savor my ego and my arrogance. But it was quite a long battle for a while in myself. I had to think, what do I do here? And I made the choice of acceptance. I decided, if this guy is so much better than me, that means there's something more that I have to learn. That no matter how much I thought I know, there's always more to learn. And you always have to understand that there always will be more to learn. So I thought, maybe this is a good opportunity. Maybe I can learn from him. Maybe I can become even better than what I am right now. So I did. I versed him over the course of a month, every so often, and I got to the point where we actually became relatively even, and for the first time I'd actually beaten him. So I guess the point of the story that I meant with that is that a big part of improving is accepting things, and this is the biggest part of it, which I'll be touching on now. So if you want to become a better gamer and aimer, there are some things you definitely need to accept. Now, first thing to accept is that you'll be beaten by people better than you, and you'll be beaten by people worse than you. A good example of this is the best tennis players in the world. They get beaten by people a lot lower ranks than them, and higher ranks than them. This is life. You're gonna get beaten by people better and worse than you. It will happen. Now, on the topic of people who are gifted, or people who are naturally talented at things, yes, there are people out there who are naturally very talented at things. Now, a good example of this is, we all learn different things at different rates. When it came to learning the scout helicopters in Battlefield 4, it took me about 200 hours to completely understand them to the max potential that I could at the time. And I grew to improve it very quickly. While with infantry, like learning how to use guns and aim, took me 1,000+ hours just to get a basic understanding of it. So everybody improves a different thing at different rates. And the truth is, you will always find someone out there who is better than you. And you'll be beaten by people who are worse than you. But don't let this discourage you, because this is a very important example here. This is something really helpful here. A big part of what prevents people from improving is their mindset, their perspective. And the best way, I believe, to improve is to look at failure, look at losing as the opportunity to improve. If you're so good at something and you get beaten by somebody, it means that they're doing something better than you, which means that you have more to learn. Don't look at it as, oh my god, he's better than me. Fuck, I've practiced for so long and this guy just comes along and stomps me. Look at it as, shit, there's actually more I can learn here. This is a good thing. I can improve from this way more than where I am right now. I finally found someone who can beat me, so I finally found the fact that I've got more to learn. I've just increased my level cap. There is more here that I can actually learn now. Another very important lesson, another very important thing to accept, is basically accept things that you can't control. A great example of this is any team-based shooter, really. Like, it's a good example I can give in Overwatch, okay? Now, this is a team-based game, and the impact of the game, you yourself as a person can make a good impact to the game, but sometimes you will lose purely because of your teammates, and anything could happen. A player could disconnect on accident, someone could be deliberately throwing the game. It could be a million reasons as to why you lost the game because of a teammate. But there are certain things about team games that, instead of fighting it, instead of letting it get to you mentally, just accept it for what it is. Accept the fact that sometimes you are going to lose team games despite your skill and despite your ability. But it does not mean that you can't learn from your losses. And you can't, like, obviously there's certain things that, I mean, you're going to have games where people are going to throw games or lose or, disconnect or whatever. Now, in that process, you can learn how to deal with tougher situations better, but there are some games where you really just can't do anything. And a big part of coming to peace with it is just accepting that you cannot control it. You have no control over your teammates. You have all the control over yourself. You can encourage them. You can help show them things. You can even insult them if you want to, but it's not going to change anything because ultimately everyone plays the game the way they want. And I believe the best thing to do is obviously to encourage people and to help them. Some people don't want to be encouraged or helped, though. It's not your place to necessarily do that either if they don't want it. But the point I'm making is that regardless of what you do, everyone has the choice to do whatever they want, and you cannot stop that. So it's better to accept the things that you can control and not the things that you can't. You can't control how your team acts. You can't control if they decide to work with you or not. But you can control the way you approach it, and I think that's a really big, important lesson. Another really helpful mindset is the student mindset. Now, what this is basically you always want to be in the mindset that you're the learner, you're the student, no matter how much you know. Because the truth is, no matter how much you know, you'll be surprised how much more there is always to learn, and you may have hit your peak, but by always being open to suggestions and open to the fact that, even if someone a lot less skillful than you gives you a suggestion, some suggestions actually may be quite helpful if seen from a certain way. Now, what I mean by that is don't be afraid to gather as much information as possible. Now, when it came to my experience of learning and improving, I like to get as much information as I could. I looked at other pilots much better than me. I asked a lot of questions. I would constantly ask people much better than me, certain things that I would struggle on, certain things that I would have difficulties with, and learning to analyze yourself and gather information in itself is a skill. So it does take time to get used to learning it, but I believe it's super helpful because knowledge is power is pretty useful here. Like, the more you know, the better. It's better to know more, to understand your faults, and to learn more from your faults, but gathering all the information you can is incredibly helpful. And one of the final things to accept is pretty straightforward. You're human. Sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you will struggle despite how good you are. Trust the process in improving. Be patient, because everyone learns at different rates. So, accept the fact that, you are not perfect. You will fail regardless of how good you are sometimes. This is life. This is part of being a human. But the better you get, the less you'll fail, and the more consistent you'll become. But here's the funny part about failing consistency. A lot of it is perspective, and this is what I'm going to be touching up on next. Okay, so here's like a little graph thing that I drew up in Paint, and just to explain what this is, this in a way represents consistency and the illusion that someone is better than you, like someone that is better than you seems like they play perfectly all the time. So this actually really well represents as well how progress works. So this is just a little hill graph thing that I made, and these numbers represent, as an example, say the amount of kills you have in a game, okay? So 10 being your not so good scores, 30 being your average, and 60 being your great scores, your best games that you've done. Now, we all have a bad, an average, and a great, and most of the time you're going to be hitting your average, which is in this range. So as it goes higher, the number goes higher, so you go from 10 to around 11, 12, so on, 20, 30. You're going to, on average, be hitting this 80% of the time, okay? And you're going to occasionally have games where you do really well, so you're going to be hitting in this range, and the pen now is not working. Okay. So you're going to have most of the time you're going to be hitting either, you're going to have times where you'll be hitting your greats and your bads, but most of the time you'll be hitting your average, regardless. So this represents now 3 years later, after 3 years of practice, just an example, how now you have a new bad, a new average, and a new great. And this changes with time and practice. So my old average is now my new bad, and my old great is now my new average. So, as an example, when you look at someone who's, I guess, a lot more experienced than you or has a lot more practice at you at something, it gives this illusion that they always play so perfectly, but that's because their average has become your grade. So from your perspective, it looks like this guy literally never plays bad, he just plays good all the time. When in reality, no matter how good you become, you will always have a bad, a good, and a great. You'll always have a bad, average, and a great. This never changes. This will never change. So you may feel like you're not improving. You may feel like you're inconsistent, but your bad, your bad, average, and great are always changing. They're always improving. And the better you get, the tighter this gets, and the more connected this is. So as an example, when you start, it looks a little more something like this. Let's see if this works. Okay. It looks a little bit more something like this when you start. Okay, cuts off there. So I've swapped over to paint, but it's the same thing. Like, you still will have the bad, the average, and the great, but it looks more like this. So your average is more within that range. It's more, you're more or less, you're more inconsistent when you start. But as you get better, this stretches. It starts to end up looking more like this with time. And your average becomes way more consistent. And as you improve, your great will become your average. And that's just how it works. But another great example I can give of this is something else that I've been doing. Okay, so every day for about a month and a half, I've been practicing a particular Overwatch AIM workshop scenario for about 30 minutes a day. And I have logged my progress every day based on the accuracy percentage that I got on that day. So, as an example, so what this is a line graph representing, the bottom row here represents the day, and the left side of the row here represents the accuracy percentage that I got. So, day 1, I got 34% accuracy. Day 2, 34. Day 3, 36, whatever. Now, you can see here, over time, how the consistency changed and how my bad, good, and great changed as well. My bad, average, and great. So, I started off all over the place, yeah? I was going from 34 all the way up to 38, all the way down to 33, all the way up to 41. I'd have so pretty much at the time, you could say that 36 was my average, 34 to 33 was my bad, and 38 to 40 was my great, yeah? So, as it kept going, this started to change. So my average started becoming around the 38 range, my great got to the 41, and my bad was around 36. So you can see how, when it comes to consistency, how this all became a lot tighter, while here was kind of all over the place. So the difference to this, in comparison, like, this is all over the place. This is a lot tighter than what it is here. So this represents consistency, and this is affected greatly by not just how much you practice or like over time or what you do. A big part of actually what can impact this and change this is your mental state and your physical state. So you simply not getting enough sleep, exercise, not eating well, not hydrating properly, mentally being in a bad mood, everything, both mental and physical, can greatly affect your performance, which in turn affects your consistency. So the better you get in time with patience, see, look, it took me around a month and a half here to get good consistency, but with time and patience, this will improve. And what you do with your physical and your mental state will greatly affect this. So when it comes to consistency, practice, look after yourself physically and mentally, and you will see results. Okay, I've explained to you the mental, perspective on this. I've explained to you how I believe consistency works. Now to pretty much get to how to improve. Now, this is not, this may be, but this is not necessarily the best scientific way for improvement. So, this way I'm about to explain how I improve is my belief in how I believe is the best way to improve. Now, this has worked for me for a very long time, but it's pretty much a list of steps that I believe are really helpful to, and I believe actually quite well applies to learning anything in life. So, to begin, the very first thing that I want to touch up on how to improve is whatever you're doing, whatever it is that you're trying to improve on, make sure it's hard, but not impossible. You're probably wondering what I mean by that. So, I'm going to give you an example here of, say, like a gym, okay? When you go to a gym and you want to work out, you don't pick weights that are so ridiculously light, because you're not going to make any gains from it. It's too light. there's no gains for it. It's just too light for you. But you're not going to pick a weight that's you can't lift either. Okay, you're not going to pick a weight that will physically damage you, will physically harm you. You want to pick something heavy, something difficult for you, something that you find challenging, but not something that you find impossible. This, I believe, is the best way to learn something. Or the gym is very obviously a different example to gaming, but in gaming, usually the better that you verse, pretty much the faster that you learn, because the more challenge that you face, the more you're forced to adapt and look at your faults, hence helping you improve quicker. If you verse someone that you find easy and you're demolishing them, you're not going to find any faults in yourself because you're beating them. But if you're versing someone that you find much better than you, them beating you will point out your own faults better. So the second tip about improving is, well, this can help some people. This personally has helped me quite a lot, and that's having feedback. So what I mean by that is keep a log of your progress. So that graph I showed you earlier, that line graph of me on my accuracy percentage, I didn't make that for the sake of this video. I made that because it actually helps motivate me to keep practicing, because I look at my improvement and I think, well, I'm doing well here, I don't want to lose this. So actually having feedback, like logging your progress, is a great motivator. Like say if you're working out, you take a picture of yourself once a week and you look at the gains that you're making. When you go back and look at these gains, it's a good way to motivate yourself to continue. So having feedback, logging your progress, is actually a really good way to stick to what you're doing. It helps motivate you. It's worked for me personally. So just something to recommend, maybe to give it a shot if you feel like you're demotivated and you can't stick with something. Another tip is to focus on the present, not the result. Now, this is actually a lot harder than it looks, because you'd be amazed how much you can discourage yourself by focusing too much on the future, focusing too much on how long this is going to take. So while you're training, focus on the training, focus on the situation that you're in now. While you're training, I guess it kind of depends on what you're doing as well. So for example, say you're, I don't know, you're aim training, okay? You're playing an aim trainer. Instead of focusing on the score that you're going to get at the end, focus on the actual task, not the future, not the result of the score. You're about to play a game of soccer and you want to win. Don't focus on how many goals you're going to get at the end of the game. Focus on how you're going to get the goals in the game. Focus on the game itself in the moment. Don't focus on the future. Focus on the present. I know I've just told you to focus on the present, but what can also be helpful is focusing on the reward. Not during training here, not while you're actually physically doing the task, but say you are not doing the task and you feel a bit discouraged. A good way, one thing that's helped me, I guess this is a bit more on the side of like willpower, personal willpower, is I like to picture the reward in my mind, or I like to look at the reward. So say for example your reward is, I want to become an amazing soccer player, okay? I really want to work hard on this. Think about the reward and visualize it in your head, or actually go and look at it. So go and look at the best soccer players. Sometimes doing that motivates you big time, because you look at it and you think, this is the goal I want. It's in front of me and I can get it. But if you visualize it, it really helps you chase it better. The problem is with doing this with some people is they visualize it and they go, oh my god, look at all this work. And that's when it comes to the part where you go back to focusing on the present. So you can look at the future when you're not training to look at the reward of all of it. But when you are training, focus on the present, not the reward. Because when you focus on the present in the training, when you start focusing on the future while you're training, it takes your focus off your actual training. And when you're training, you want to put all your focus onto your training, if that makes any sense. So this obviously could be a bit different when it comes to a gym. But for me, when it comes to aim training, this is really important for me. So in a nutshell, focus on the present when you're training. Focus on the training itself. Don't focus on the results. But when you're not training, if you feel demotivated and you want to keep continuing with the training, remind yourself what you're fighting for. Okay guys, so that basically wraps it up. Now, if you guys really like this video, please let me know down in the comments, and I will gladly make another part. And the next part could be more on the mechanical side of things, you know, the things about sensitivity, aim trainers, you name it. Like, I'm happy to turn this into a series if you guys enjoyed the video. So, just a quick recap on one thing is, remember to analyze it's good to analyze everything. Remember to look at your faults, look at every mistake you make, and don't be afraid to lose. Don't be afraid to put yourself in the position of losing. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's painful, believe me. I know, and the higher you're raised up on that pedestal, the more painful it can be, especially when you've been told for so long that you're so good at something and then someone comes along and takes away that mantle. It does hurt, but it's the key to improving. So see you guys in the next one, and I hope you all have a really good day.